Then they set forward and began to go up the hill, and up the hill they went. But before they got to the top, Christiana began to pant, and said, I dare say this is a breathing hill. No marvel if they that love their ease more than their souls choose to themselves a smoother way. Then said Mercy, I must sit down. Also the least of the children began to cry. Come, come, said Greatheart, sit not down here, for a little above is the prince's harbour. Then took he the little boy by the hand, and led him up there too. When they were come to the arbour, they were very willing to sit down, for they were all in a pelting heat. Then said Mercy, How sweet is rest to them that labour, and how good is the Prince of Pilgrims to provide such resting places for them. Of this arbour I have heard much, but I never saw it before. But here let us beware of sleeping, for as I have heard, for that it costs poor Christian dear. Then said Mr. Greatheart to the little ones, Come, my pretty boys, how do you do? What think you now of going on pilgrimage? Sir, said the least, I was almost beat out of heart, but I thank you for lending me a hand at my need. And I remember now what my mother hath told me, namely, that the way to heaven is as up as a ladder, and the way to hell is as down a hill. But I had rather go up the ladder to life than down the hill to death. Then said Mercy, But the proverb is, to go down the hill is easy. But James said, for that was his name, The day is coming when, in my opinion, going downhill would be the hardest of all. 'Tis a good boy, said his master. Thou hast given her a right answer. Then Mercy smiled, but the little boy did blush. Come, said Christiana, will you eat a little to sweeten your mouths, while you sit here to rest your legs? For I have here a piece of pomegranate which Mr. Interpreter put in my hand just when I came out of his doors. He gave me also a piece of a honeycomb and a little bottle of spirits. I thought he gave you something, said Mercy, because he called you aside. Yes, so he did, said the other, but, said Christiana, it shall still be, as I said it should, when at first we came from home. Thou shalt be a sharer in all the good that I have, because thou so willingly didst become my companion. Then she gave to them, and they did eat, both Mercy and the boys. And, said Christiana to Mr. Greatheart, Sir, will you do as we? But he answered, You are going on pilgrimage, and presently I shall return. Much good may what you have do to you. At home I eat the same every day. Now when they had eaten and drank, and had chatted a little longer, their guide said to them, The day wears away. If you think good, let us prepare to be going. So they got up to go, and the little boys went before. But Christiana forgot to take her bottle of spirits with her, so she sent her little boy back to fetch it. Then said Mercy, I think this is a losing place. Here Christian lost his roll, and here Christiana left her bottle behind her. Sir, what is the cause of this? So their guide made answer and said, The cause is sleep or forgetfulness. Some sleep when they should keep awake, and some forget when they should remember, and this is the very cause why. Often at the resting places, some pilgrims in some things come off losers. Pilgrims should watch and remember what they have already received under their greatest enjoyments, but for want of doing so, oft-times their rejoicing ends in tears, and their sunshine in a cloud. Witness the story of Christian at this place. When they were come to the place where Mistrust and Timorous met Christian to persuade him to go back for fear of the lions, they perceived as it were a stage, and before it, toward the road, a broad plate with a copy of verses written thereon, and underneath the reason of raising up of that stage in that place rendered. The verses were these, Let him who sees this stage take heed unto his heart and tongue, lest if he do not, here he speed, as some have long agone. The words underneath the verses were, This stage was built to punish such upon who through timorous or mistrust shall be afraid to go further on pilgrimage. Also on this stage, both Mistrust and Timorous were burned through the tongue with a hot iron for endeavouring to hinder Christian in his journey. Then said Mercy, This is much like to the saying of the beloved, What shall be given unto thee, or what shall be done unto thee, thou false tongue? Sharp arrows of the mighty with coals of juniper. So they went on till they came within sight of the lions. Now Mr. Greatheart was a strong man, so he was not afraid of a lion, but yet when they were come up to the place where the lions were, The boys that went before were glad when to cringe behind, for they were afraid of the lions. So they stepped back and went behind. At this their guide smiled and said, "How now, my boys, do you love to go before when no danger doth approach, and love to come behind so soon as the lions appear?" Now as they went up, Mr. Greatheart drew his sword with intent to make a way for the pilgrims in spite of the lions. Then there appeared one that, it seems, had taken upon him to back the lions, and he said to the pilgrim's guide, "What is the cause of your coming hither?" Now the name of that man was Grim, or Bloody Man, because of his slaying of pilgrims, and he was of the race of the giants. Then said the pilgrim's guide, "These women and children are going on pilgrimage, and this is the way they must go, and go it they shall in spite of thee and the lions." "This is not their way, neither shall they go therein. I am come forth to withstand them, and to that end will back the lions. Now to say truth, by reason of the fierceness of the lions, and of the grim carriage of him that did back them, this way had of late lain much unoccupied, and was almost all grown over with grass." Then said Christiana, "Though the highways have been unoccupied heretofore, and though the travellers have been made in time past to walk through the bypaths, it must not be so now I am risen. Now I am risen a mother in Israel." Then he swore by the lions, but it should, and therefore bid them to turn aside, for they should not have passage there. But their guide made first his approach unto Grim, and laid so heavily at him with his sword that he forced him to a retreat. Then said he that attempted to back the lions, "Will you slay me upon mine own ground? It is the king's highway that we are in, and in his way it is but that thou hast placed thy loins. But these women and these children, though weak, shall hold on their way in spite of thy lions." And with that he gave him again a downright blow, and brought him upon his knees. With this blow he also broke his helmet, and with the next he cut off an arm. Then did the giant roar so hideously that his voice frightened the women, and yet they were glad to see him lie sprawling upon the ground. Now the lions were chained, and so of themselves could do nothing. Wherefore, when old Grim that intended to back them was dead, Mr. Greatheart said to the pilgrims, "Come now and follow me, and no hurt shall happen to you from the lions." They therefore went on, but the women trembled as they passed by them. The boys also looked as if they would die, but they all got by without further hurt. Now then they were within sight of the porter's lodge, and they soon came up unto it, but they made the more haste after this to go thither, because it is dangerous travelling there in the night. So when they were come to the gate, the guide knocked, and the porter cried, "Who is there?" But as soon as the guide had said, "It is I," he knew his voice and came down. For the guide had oft before that come thither as a conductor of pilgrims. When he was come down, he opened the gate, and seeing the guide standing just before it, for he saw not the women, for they were behind him, he said unto him, "How now, Mr. Greatheart, what is your business here so late tonight?" "I have brought," said he, "some pilgrims hither, where by my lord's commandment they must lodge. I had been here some time ago, had I not been opposed by the giant that did use to back the lions. But I, after a long and tedious combat with him, have cut him off, and have brought the pilgrims hither in safety." "Will you not go in and stay until morning?" "No, I will return to my lord tonight." "Oh, sir, I know not how to be willing you should leave us on our pilgrimage. You have been so faithful and so loving to us. You have fought so stoutly for us. You have been so hearty in counselling of us, that I shall never forget your favour towards us." Then said Mercy, "Oh, that we might have thy company to our journey's end! How can such poor women as we hold out in a way so full of troubles as this way is, without a friend and defender?" Then said James, the youngest of the boys, "Pray, sir, be persuaded to go with us and help us, because we are so weak, and the way is so dangerous as it is." "I am at my lord's commandment. If he shall allot me to be your guide quite through, I will willingly wait upon you. But here you have failed at first. For when he bid me come thus far with you, then you should have begged me of him to have gone quite through with you, and he would have granted your request. However, at present I must withdraw, and so, good Christiana, Mercy, and my brave children, adieu." Then the porter, Mr. Watchful, asked Christiana of her country and of her kindred, and she said, "I came from the city of destruction. I am a widow woman, and my husband is dead. His name was Christian the Pilgrim." "How?" said the porter. "Was he your husband?" "Yes," said she, "and these are his children. And this," pointing to Mercy, "is one of my townswomen." Then the porter rang his bell, as at such times he is wont, And there came to door one of the damsels, whose name was Humble Mind, and to her the porter said, Go tell it within that Christiana, the wife of Christian, and her children are come hither on pilgrimage. She went in therefore and told it. But oh, what noise for gladness was there within when the damsel did but drop that word out of her mouth. So they came with haste to the porter, for Christiana stood still at the door. Then some of the most grave said unto her, Come in, Christiana, come in, thou wife of that good man. Come in, thou blessed woman, come in, with all that are with thee. So she went in, and they followed her that were her children and her companions. Now when they were gone in, they were had into a very large room, where they were bidden to sit down. So they sat down, and the chief of the house was called to see and welcome the guests. Then they came in, and understanding who they were, did salute each other with a kiss, and said, Welcome, ye vessels of the grace of God, welcome to us, your friends. Now, because it was somewhat late, and because the pilgrims were weary with their journey, and also made faint with the sight of the fight and of the terrible lions, therefore they desired as soon as might be to prepare to go to rest. Nay, said those of the family, refresh yourselves first with a morsel of meat. For they had prepared for them a lamb, with the accustomed sauce belonging thereto. For the porter had heard before their coming, and had told it to them within. So when they had supped, and ended their prayer with a psalm, they desired they might go to rest. But let us, said Christiana, if we may be so bold as to choose be in that chamber. That was my husband's when he was here. So they had them up thither, and they lay all in a room. When they were at rest, Christiana and Mercy entered into discourse about things that were convenient. Little did I think once that when my husband went on pilgrimage I should ever have followed. And you as little thought of lying in his bed and in his chamber to rest as you do now. And much less did I ever think of seeing his face with comfort and of worshipping the Lord the King with him, and yet now I believe I shall. Hark, don't you hear a noise? Yes, it is, as I believe, a noise of music, for joy that we are here. Wonderful music in the house, music in the heart, and music also in heaven, for joy that we are here. Thus they talked a while, and then betook themselves to sleep. So in the morning, when they were awake, Christiana said to Mercy, What was the matter that you did laugh in your sleep tonight? I suppose you were in a dream. So it was, and a sweet dream it was. But are you sure I laughed? Yes, you laughed heartily, but prithee, Mercy, tell me thy dream. I was dreamed that I sat all alone in a solitary place, and was bemoaning of the hardness of my heart. Now I had not sat there long, but methought many were gathered about me, to see me and to hear what it was that I said. So they hearkened, and I went on bemoaning the hardness of my heart. At this some of them laughed at me, some called me a fool, and some began to thrust me about. With that, methought I looked up, and saw one coming with wings towards me. So he came directly to me, and said, Mercy, what aileth thee? Now when he had heard me make my complaint, he said, Peace be to thee. He also wiped mine eyes with his handkerchief, and clad me in silver and gold. He put a chain about my neck, and earrings in mine ears, and a beautiful crown upon my head. Then he took me by the hand, and said, Mercy, come after me. So he went up, and I followed till we came at a golden gate. Then he knocked, and when they within had opened, the man went in, and I followed him up to a throne, upon which one sat. And he said to me, Welcome, daughter. The place looked bright and twinkling like the stars, or rather like the sun, and I thought that I saw your husband there. So I awoke from my dream. But did I laugh? Laugh, aye, and well you might to see yourself so well. For you must give me leave to tell you that I believe it was a good dream, and that, as you have begun to find the first part true, so you shall find the second at last. God speaketh once, yea twice, yet man perceiveth it not. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumberings upon the bed. We need not, when abed, lie awake to talk with God. He can visit us while we sleep, and cause us then to hear his voice. Our heart oftentimes wakes when we sleep, and God can speak to that, either by words, by proverbs, by signs and similitudes, as well as if one was awake. Well, I am glad of my dream, for I hope ere long to see it fulfilled, to the making me laugh again. I think it now high time to rise, and to know what we must do. Pray, if they invite us to stay a while, let us willingly accept of the proffer. I am the willinger to stay a while here to grow better acquainted with these maids. Methinks prudence, piety, and charity have very comely and sober countenances. We shall see what they will do. So when they were up and ready, they came down, and they asked one another.